Hello everyone, this is Kayla, or otherwise South Dakota Ghost Girl. I posted up my first video a while back and I haven't posted since. I did get a subscriber out of my first video, so thank you so much for subscribing. It means the world to me. I haven't posted in a while as I've been super busy. I'm a mom, I'm in school. For my master's, and I'm also currently applying to medical school and I work, so my life has just gotten a little past me. Okay, I'm sorry. But I wanted to take some time to post another video. So the main reason I wanted to create this channel was I wanted to take some time to share my family and I's experiences. And growing up, I've always loved watching stuff on paranormal experiences, different people, stories, and I would watch YouTube. I'd watch things like A Haunting, love Paranormal Activity, just different shows that I got really into. And I apologize if you hear my dog in the background. I have a husky, he's kind of crazy. But, and also I apologize for the background. I don't really have anything super exciting for a background yet. I don't have a setup. My house is super small. But, going on, sorry, I have a squirrel brain big time. But the main reason I wanted to share this, again, was to talk about my family's experiences, talk about my own. But then with watching all these shows, I always noticed that there was no one that discussed their stories in South Dakota nor in North Dakota. And being in the Dakotas, we have a very interesting history. Although we don't have much for people here, we do have a history, is all I'll put it. So I wanted to take some time to kind of share some of my experiences, share some of my families. I'm not going to take a super crazy amount of time to edit these videos. I probably won't edit this one at all just because I just want to get to the point of discussing my story and my family's. And if this channel does blow up a little bit more, I do want to bring on some of my family members, have them talk about their stories, and possibly look at ghost hunting too, and taking some time to look at getting better equipment and take some time to ghost hunt here in South Dakota. I might do other videos too. I just haven't decided. My main focus is ghost hunting and ghost stories on here, but I'm going to get to the point of this. So I think the story I want to share, I'm going to keep it kind of short compared to the first one I had, was a story that, or I should say more experience that happened when I was over at my grandparents' house. So growing up, my parents divorced, my dad lived with my grandparents, and we lived in the basement until I think I was in my early teens. And there were different things that happened there, nothing really too crazy while I lived there, but my cousin had seen the spirit of what he thinks is my great-grandfather, and he's seen him after my grandma had a major surgery. So my whole family's always kind of wondered, was he there to watch over her, because they were really close when he was alive, and then when she was alive, she had a very special connection to him. So we always kind of wondered, was he just watching over her, making sure she was safe? And so it was a really special story to our family, and probably even more so to my cousin too, as that would be great to know that there's someone watching over grandma at all times. So after my dad had got married and moved out, and my brother and I would always go over every other week. So 1 week with my mom, 1 week with my dad. So the 1 week I was with my dad, I decided to drive over to my grandparents' house and spend some time with my grandma. And we were sitting in her kitchen. So to kind of lay out the house, when you walked into her house, first there was the kitchen and then a little island that we a lot of times would sit at while grandma would bake or cook, and we'd all sit and chat with her. And then if you kept going past your right, it was a living room, and then a small hallway, and your very first door to the right was a computer room. And there were vents, of course, in every room for the basement. And the one day I was over, and it was nighttime, we were just sitting there in the kitchen, just enjoying our chat, doing what me and grandma always did. And we decided to move to the computer room. And we kind of heard some mumbling coming up from the vent, which we really didn't think much of it because we just figured, it's noises from a vent. And at that time, it was just me and her there. My grandfather was in town. I think he was shopping. I don't remember what he was doing. None of my cousins were there. My brother wasn't there. My dad wasn't there. My uncle and aunt lived down the road. They also weren't there. So it was just me and my grandma in this house. And so we moved back into the kitchen to watch her show, and she turned down the volume a bunch because her and I were chatting, and I think she was making some cookies like she usually did, and they were amazing. But all of a sudden, I heard this male voice coming from the computer room, and I thought it was really weird. I couldn't understand what they were saying, and she got this really confused look on her face, and we both kind of moved to the computer room to hear it better. And from the vent, we could hear it sounded like a guy talking to someone, and it was just weird because we didn't hear anyone talking back to them. And I turned around to look at my grandma, and she was tearing up. And at that time, I started getting scared because I'm like, oh, God, someone broke into my grandma's house. And I'm going to have to go down there and fight them because I'm not going to let grandma go down there and fight them. But when I turned around and looked at her, and she was crying, and the look on her face, she wasn't scared. But when I asked her, I'm like, Grandma, why are you crying? Do you need me to go downstairs? Do you need me to, do something? And she, right away, she's like, that sounds like my father. She's like, that sounds exactly like him. And I was really perplexed. I'm like, okay. I never met my great-grandfather. He died when I think she was 14 when he passed away. So it was really interesting because the weird thing was my grandma was currently going through cancer treatments, and her health was not doing very well. And my grandma actually ended up passing away from cancer. And so reflecting back on what happened to my cousin when he was little, it made me wonder, is he here to watch over her again? And of course, too, we went downstairs to double check, make sure that, everything was good. And there was no one downstairs. The door was locked. That was downstairs. We looked everywhere, and there was no one there. When my grandpa got home, he double checked. No one was there. And so when Grandma, and I sat down, come to find out, my grandfather had also heard voices through the vent one time with my one younger cousin. They were just sitting in the living room, and they heard a male voice coming through the basement. And it was, my grandfather said, he's like, I didn't recognize the voice, but he's like, it was a very caring sounding voice. It was not a scary sounding voice, but he's like, he still had to go double check it because it's like, who the heck's in his house? But neither him or my cousin seen anyone. And when we were younger, too, I want to say it was my brother or it was my older cousin, one of the other two, or it could have been both of them. And I believe my father did, too, had heard voices outside of a man yelling. And it always kind of seemed like these would just randomly happen. And after I had discussed this, a lot of my other family members started coming forward and were like, yeah, we've heard voices in the vents too. And it was always a man's voice. But the one time I heard it, I was with Grandma, and she told me, she's like, that sounded exactly like her father. And then shortly after, she did end up passing away from cancer. So it was one of those things where, the best guess I can give you is that maybe it was her father coming back to protect her. And the weird thing is the only other paranormal thing that's happened in the house was my dad seeing a little girl in there that looked exactly like me, and he thought it was me, and I'll share that story more on another time, but that was a little girl. But kind of moving forward on that, my grandparents were the only people that ever lived in that house. They built that house themselves, and there's really no rhyme or reason as to who else, if it was supernatural, what other ghosts it could be other than him, because like I said, my cousin seen my great-grandfather, and before anyone wonders, how did he know when my cousin told my grandmother in the morning, she's like, he told her, I seen this man, Grandma, and he's like, it didn't scare him, he's like, he just seen him and went back to bed. And so when my cousin described this man to my grandma pulled up photos and showed my cousin, and my cousin pointed out the man, and come to find out it was my great-grandfather. So my cousin has a lot of really interesting stories, especially so his wife. His wife, she's an amazing woman, and she's dealt with a lot of paranormal things. So I'm hoping to bring her on one of these days. But again, it was one of those things in that house where we really don't know who else it could have been. The farmstead itself, the original house, had different things happen at it that I could bring my dad on to kind of talk about. There were people that passed away in it and different stories that my uncles experienced. So I want to take some time to maybe share some of that. But again, that story, it wasn't anything scary, but it was something I experienced. And it's something that just it makes me question, you know, because I'm not a religious person myself, but what is the next thing in life? And do we come back to see our loved ones before they pass, or even during major events in their life, do we come back to protect them? And that's one thing I always kind of question, you know, there's so many unanswered things, or so many questions we have that we don't have answers to. And so I think the next story I plan to share is an experience both myself and my brother and a couple cousins and I experienced at a cemetery. Or I might look at sharing a story of my growing up in Ravillo or just different things. I haven't really decided which ghost story to share yet. If this video or my other one blow up a little bit, get some more views or whatnot, and people do have an interest, I might just go to Twitter or somewhere to make a poll and have people ask, or even if people just want to comment on here and be like, hey, you know, discuss one of those that you were talking about or whatnot. So I'll kind of look at some options. I don't know yet. It's so hit and miss because right now my last video had 4 views and I thought that was awesome. It was a long video, and to the 4 people that watched, I'm sorry you had to listen to me for that long. But again, I really appreciate it. And I got a subscriber out of it. That means more to me than you can know. So thank you again. I look forward to sharing more stories and to also possibly look at ghost hunting. So if that's something people are interested in, I can maybe post a video and discuss some options and then reach out to these places and see what we have. So I hope y'all take care, have a happy holidays, stay safe. Here in South Dakota, we got bombarded by a blizzard and now we're expecting another blizzard. So it makes me wonder why my ancestors moved here and then why I stuck around. But there's some greatness to South Dakota, but then again, there also isn't. So I hope y'all take care.